Welcome to Machine Builder Talk, the podcast where we dive deep into the world of automation, engineering, and the craft of building machines. Whether you're a seasoned automation pro or just starting your journey, you're in the right place to connect, learn, and get inspired. My name is Colin, and I'm your host, so let's get started. Welcome back to another episode of Machine Builder Talk. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome Stephen Slothouber onto the show. Stephen worked for years as a controls engineer at a couple of large machine builders before deciding to branch off to start his own business called Ember Ops. Now he uses all that hands-on experience to help machine builders streamline their sales and optimize their operations. Stephen, welcome to Machine Builder Talk.
Thanks for having me, Colin. I'm really excited to do this.
Yeah, we've been talking about this for a little while and it's finally making it happen. So it's good to have you on the show. Let's start off with telling us a little bit about who you are, a little bit of what you've been doing in the industry in the past, and what are you doing these days? And tell us about Ember Ops.
Yeah, so my journey in automation started when I was really young. My dad was actually employee number 12 at ATS Automation, a big machine builder here in southwestern Ontario and globally. So, he used to bring me and my brothers to the shop floor and we saw all these, really cool machine turning centers and automated, like adept robots. And it was pretty cool. So that definitely sparked the interest from a very young age. And then out of college, I started at ATS as a junior hardware controls designer, worked up to software integration and then leading projects and just project lead on some large, automotive, energy, life science projects. Got to travel the world, which is pretty awesome, great experience. So that's sort of my automation journey. I worked for another company called Ramp as a senior controls project specialist and project manager. And I learned a lot about the entirety of the business throughout all those roles and was able to fortunately have the opportunity to help streamline a lot of the processes within those companies. And I really love doing that work because just seeing the compound returns. So like building a code generator for one company and, that cut our coding down significantly on projects. So things like that, project management tools, I've done it all and really loved doing all that. So about 4 years ago, I had an opportunity to kind of do that streamlining and that process work full time in all different industries and for smaller businesses and using a platform called Zoho. So I've been doing that for about 4 years and I've loved it. So everything from inventory managed to CRMs to custom operational apps. We've built out some really cool solutions, cloud solutions, integrating into all different, services and just really streamlining people's businesses and taking them from paper and what I call nuclear spreadsheets into the cloud and really setting them up for the AI age. So about last year, August, I decided that I was going to do this on my own and I was going to focus on the automation industry. So that's builders, integrators, and distributors, as well as manufacturers, mostly in the advanced manufacturing space, helping them with these cloud tools because you know how it is, like we're automating as automation builders, we've automated our manufacturers, but we're kind of left in the Stone Age when it comes to our own processes, right? We rely heavily on Microsoft, Excel and Word and it just, my goal is to, this is a little corny, but I want to automate the automators, right? So I want to help them reduce their time in sales, reduce their operational burden so that they can claim some margin back and really, be able to focus on building quality machines. So that's what we do at Ember Ops. We use Zoho and we just help people streamline.
Okay, and I got a couple of takeaways from that. First of all, I love that term. I think you should catchphrase that. Automating the automators. I think that should be a subtitle underneath Ember Ops. Seriously, It's really good. It says everything. It tells someone from the outside kind of if they know what automation is, I guess, but it says everything in a
Hmm.
really short sentence. I love it. I think you should fly with that one. But what I got here is that, so essentially, most machine builders don't start off to be very good at admin or organizing. They basically fragment everything together. So as you said, they use Excel, Word. They might have their favorite project manager that they use for managing their projects. They might have Excel spreadsheets for contact databases and such. So what you do with Zoho as the platform, because Zoho have many programs under one umbrella that synchronize and work with each other, to the best of my knowledge, right?
Hmm.
So what you're doing is basically taking a platform that's already proven out there with all the right pieces in place and bringing that into a machine builder or an automation company using your automation experience in the way that the process flows and how projects are assigned to different designers, and then the build process and the buying and then the follow-ups on top of getting that work in the first place. And most machine builders that I know of haven't been trained on sales or sales processes. And so it's kind of like a catch 22. They're too busy building things and automating things to actually spend any time on their own businesses to automate the processes and make things easier there. So that's where you come in. That's what I got from that.
Yeah, for sure. That one note, like they're too busy to be working on the business. That's key. I see that a lot. And the sales piece as well, right? Sales is tricky, especially if you're have like an engineering background, which I have. And it sales in terms of the soft skills and stuff like that can definitely be hard to learn. But I find, and for myself and for my clients, like having a good sales system that can give you quick feedback, be able to show you what's working, what's not, it really just accelerates that learning curve. And using things like AI, especially now these days, to help you sort of give you good feedback and where, what you need to do to help on the sales front, that's huge, right? So, yeah, like I'm helping a ton of different companies now. Just make sure that they capture the data, they capture it easily, they capture it efficiently, and then it flows through the business properly, right? So that we're not doing dual entry and we're making mistakes and we're just capturing it once and it goes to who it needs to go to.
Right. So, for example, if you've got a contact information for somebody right now at a lot of machine builders, a lot of companies, not just machine builders, but other industries, that contact information could be in multiple different applications, okay, and entered slightly different by different people. And so, you might have one that says Steve, one that says Stephen, okay? It might have the postcode wrong, the phone number wrong. What you're doing is basically trying to create, and I'm using contact information as a base point here because it's a lot more than just contact information, as a single point of truth. So you've got one data source that all the programs use to reference when you're actually doing, let's say, something in your CRM system. You can use the same contact information in CRM as you can in the accounting system. And they basically share the same database. Would that be correct?
Yeah. So for me, it's all about synchronizing and integrating your tools, right? I'm an integrator by trade, and I've integrated lots of different systems into PLCs, and I do the same thing with the CRM. So integrating contact information into your accounting system is crucial, right? And that's a lot of what I do is like helping those like bridge that gap between, and so that you have clean data, but using the CRM as sort of the source of truth for your customer data is critical. And a lot of people are like, well, I'm too small, I don't need a CRM. But like, this is where it starts, right? I just put a post out there about if you're ever looking to sell your business, you need to have clean, good data for the accountants so that when they're going to come rip apart your books and your pipeline, right, you have solid data that you can back up. So having that, truth in the CRM is super crucial. And then integrating that with your books and your marketing, with your project management tools, all that stuff is super crucial.
I think you don't have to be selling your business to have that. I think that's an important part of your business anyway. But I think that leads to the ability to automate things. I mean, you're just talking about getting information into different programs from a single source of truth. But once you've got the information now, having just finished writing a book about it, you can start automating some of those processes using AI. And AI is one of those things that's a little bit of a touchy subject with some people. They think that it's going to steal jobs. They think that it's not authentic when they use AI. And as long as they use it as an assistant and put their own personality, their own empathy, their own humility, their own humor into those messages and don't take the AI verbatim, you can really use it to personalize, actually, even more so personalize messages than you could before, because you can use the AI to pull data from someone's LinkedIn profile, for example, and use that as a reference to say, hey, you worked at such and such 4 years ago. I did some project work there 4 years ago. Do you remember this particular line, from an automation point of view? And I think it's something that you've either got to get on now or you're going to get left behind when it comes to AI. So on that note, what would be the best tip that you could give to, let's say, a small automation machine builder? Let's say they've got 10 to 20 employees. How do they get started in organizing and automating their operations and their sales processes?
Yeah, so I would say definitely start with having some CRM, some sort of centralized contact database, but then start to use those tools to actually create your SOPs, right? So instead of making a bunch of documents about this is how we do things, like use the tool to actually guide people into this is how we progress a project or a sale or something like that through, through what needs to be done. So that's one for sure, like having those systems in place. And then from AI's perspective, people are using AI wrong, and this is why it's touchy, because they use it to sort of generate content, when for me, it shouldn't generate anything. It should really distill content. So you should be feeding it lots and lots of information. So right now, like I write more than I ever have because I feed all that information to AI so that I take it out of my brain and I make these large documents, and then I can feed that to AI, and then it can distill that knowledge and actionable insights. So from, having those systems in place and then using your insights and giving AI that and building those documents out, and then combining that in a way that we can integrate a CRM into AI so that it can say, based on previous sales or things like that, this is the type of message we should do, or we should follow up with this, or give them this value, things like that. It can process that a lot quicker than we can, and just take a lot of that work off a salesperson or an owner's plate and automate. And yeah, using cloud tools and using APIs to pull that information and give it contextually in a CRM is huge, right?
It is. You mentioned a couple of things there that struck out to me. First of all, SOPs, standard operating procedures, are something that a lot of companies don't even think about. And so they've got processes that only one person knows. That one person receives a letter or a proposal. Actually, let's put it into more of a business context, an RFQ. Okay. They know the person to give that RFQ to based on what the type of project it is. But if they're off, they're sick or they're on vacation, then someone else has to jump in and actually take over that role. And if they haven't got some kind of standard operating procedure to follow, then they're just guessing half the time. And so standard operating procedures, yes, they are a little bit of work up front, but they save so much time and aggravation later on. And essentially, I guess the premise behind the standard operating procedure or an SOP would be, if you're going to do something on a repeatable basis and it could be done by multiple people, then create a standard operating procedure for that. And then build on that. You can have operations, you can have sales, you can have accounting, you can have project piece, break them into different categories so that your team members can jump in there if they had to and just follow a step-by-step guide of how to process that particular issue, or the right procedure to actually follow through and complete those tasks that come in. The other thing is, you mentioned AI writing. So writing, you said you do more writing than ever, and I'm doing more writing than ever. But people don't know. They think, well, if you use AI to write an article, then you just put a prompt in there and it comes out, right? But yes, you can do that, and it will be a very generic robot written
When, yeah.
article. But a lot of people don't know. I write an article, major article every week, and it can take me 1 to 3 days of solid writing to write that article. As you said, it's basically a brain dump into Google Docs or a Word document, and then taking portions of that and using AI to organize it, put it in a coherent structure that flows better than what we can as humans sometimes, especially if you're not a professional writer or editor, and use it as your writing assistant. And more of an editor, I guess, would be the way I use it, so that your articles come out nice, clean, crisp, but essentially using all the knowledge that you have in your head and not using any of the AI language model to actually generate the content. Would that be the same kind of routine that you're doing?
Yeah, 100%, right? Like I can jump all over the place, my brain jumps around and I see things high level, but I'm sort of jumping over to things. So when I have ideas, I'm sort of dumping them out and I kind of jump from one place to another, and being able to like write that all out or dictate it even better, right? If you're able to just dictate that to AI and talk to it and say, this is all the stuff I'm thinking about this SOP or how I approach my business or how I approach this customer, getting all that, feeding it, and it coming up with like, this is more of a flow that works, right? And it should be less words than what you fed it, right? So
Yeah,
that
exactly.
is, yeah, the issue right now that we're seeing on, with content is just there's just so much fluff because people are just doing one-line prompts and saying, generate a post for me. Well, that's not useful, right? So the other way is I'm going to feed it as much information, and it's distilling this to make it super valuable as possible in a way that flows, that the readers like. Yeah, that's the way I approach content and using AI.
Yeah, and that's something I hear people talking about, especially from a sales point of view. Some older and younger. I'm surprised at how many younger salespeople are not actually using AI. Basically, the biggest complaint I hear is that, well, I could use AI, but then it just sounds like a robot. And it's because they're not putting any time into the prompt to actually create the content, or sharing some of their own thoughts and personalizing the prompt, and so that gets written around that. We can talk a long time about that, and maybe
Yeah,
that's
for
another
sure.
book of how to write using AI. But first of all, while I've got you here, personal thanks to you. You were one of the first reviewers of my ChatGPT for B2B sales book, and you gave me some really good suggestions. Actually, I wrote an extra 2 chapters because of the feedback you gave me, so I
That
appreciate
was a great book. It's definitely got a lot of good insights for sure. It's a good starter for people in sales to how do I even start with AI?
Exactly. And it's a foundational book, not necessarily an advanced. There are so many advanced techniques of using AI these days, especially if you start getting into deep research and
Hmm.
automation, and actually, even creating GPTs in ChatGPT. There are so many different language models out there. You can get different results from different language modules, like Claude is a good writing language model. Gemini's got its strengths, and then there are other tools within those language models that you can use, like Google LM or Notebook LM, I think they call it. Notebook LM is a great tool for uploading, let's say, some manuals, okay,
Hmm.
and then generating training from those manuals for your team members. And
Hmm.
it's really good at that kind of task. That's something that's a bit more advanced with AI, but it's really easy to use. But getting back to the transcribing, AI is really strong at transcription. It's really easy for AI to do great transcriptions. And I've gone through so many voice dictation software packages over the years, and Dragon Dictate would be the one that I tried the most. And I would spend hours training it, talking. And then when you had to use it, you had to say, period, comma, quotation marks. You had to actually say all those things in your dictation for him to actually go into the finished transcription, right? And it was just so painful. Now, just pick up your phone, your Android, your iPhone, whatever phone you're using, and just click on it, start recording. I use Letterly because it allows me to create custom transcript templates that I can output different formats. And basically talking to that, and it's so much quicker and so much more fluid for you to talk about things as opposed to typing them. And that comes back to the SOPs. If you are struggling to put your SOPs together, here's a tip for you. Get the person that knows that procedure really well and just get them to verbally tell you step by step of how to do something, record it, and then get your AI to actually create the SOP for you. Very,
Yeah.
very quick.
And that's what I do too, right? So like that's what I'm using. I'll go through like and demo something for someone, right? Or for training for one of my clients. We put the CRM together. We put everything. These are sort of the different roles and functions. Like this is how leads come in, whether they're coming in automatically or you're entering leads. And then this is how they go through qualification into opportunities and through that. And this is how you make a view. And so I do that on a meeting that I can get a transcription from. I feed that to my Claude or a chat GPT tool, and it gives me the step-by-steps and gives it a written version of it, but it also gives me insights into like, how can I demo something better next time, right? How can I use this based on these pain points that my customers have and that I've collected in my CRM? How do I structure a demo or talk to them based on what we actually do? And yeah, for sure for SOPs, right? Like I use AI and, pull transcriptions in and really give me all what I need to do. What are the actionable items, right?
Right.
I write down things all the time still. That's just my, habit, but I use that and then able to then transfer that easily and automatically to project management software and date it so that I know exactly when I have to get these things done. It's just, there's so much things. And like the future is going to be AI agents. It's going to be integrated cloud tools, and your competitors are going that route, right? So you kind of need to get on board here. There's obviously always going to be a human touch to everything. And I look at it, and I think we've kind of said this, but I look at it more of as enhancing us as humans
Exactly.
and our relationships, freeing us up from doing all the tedious things and really being able to focus on the relationships and the connections we have with our customers, really understanding their problems so that we can create better solutions for them and engineer that for them.
You're absolutely right. Even going into a meeting with a transcription app or a device, I use Plord for that. Another plug for Plord. But basically, put that down as long as your customer or the person you're meeting with is okay with recording that. And put that down. It allows you to concentrate on the conversation as opposed to trying to write something down really quickly. And then when you come out, what I do is in my meetings, I come out and I voice dictate all the key points that we discussed. Okay, the person I met with, the key items, and more importantly, the next steps. And it's all dictated. And essentially, from that same dictation or now transcription, because AI has taken it and transcribed it, I can create my visit report for a CRM, and we're going to get back to CRMs a little bit more later on, but it creates the visit report in my CRM, so I can just copy and paste that in there, because that's always been one of the banes of being in sales, was having to enter all that stuff into the CRM. But it also allows me to generate a follow-up email to the customer and say, hey, here's what we discussed. These are the action items and the next steps. And it just makes you more efficient. And you're actually doing less work to be efficient. It's crazy. So tell us about how you're using AI in your business to help your customers.
Yeah, for sure. So I agree. The transcription thing is huge, right? And being able to pull insights from there and really being able to focus on the conversation that you're having instead of scrambling to write things down is huge. It's a huge advantage now for us to be able to do that. Follow-up emails for sure. But like for me, I use it as well, for practicing sales. So I've created a GPT based on my ICP and based on, the different types of people that I work with and their pain points and their personality. I fed it all that information, fed it in some transcripts, fed it all this instructions, and I can actually practice sales calls with this AI tool, talking to it, right?
Right.
Which is huge, right? So imagine that for your sales organization where, I've heard some people in this industry, like a distributor, part maker, telling me it takes 2 years to get their sales reps basically up to par, right? And some of that makes sense, like
Yeah.
but like if you could accelerate that to even a year, 6 months by utilizing AI and giving that instant feedback, why wouldn't you, right? Like that's just gonna, and being able to have all those SOPs. And if you've done the job already of building out SOPs and building out those procedures, you're already at an advantage that other people are not, right? You can feed that information in and give you that. So that's a big thing that I'm using it. Project management, it's huge, right? Having those conversations, being able to have the transcripts, getting background, and being able to like ask it information about like what did they use again, or what were they doing, what was that issue they had, or why didn't they want to go with this.
Yeah.
You feed a project all the transcripts, and then you can just ask it, right? It becomes your knowledge base, and the team has access to that. So I can't live without AI now. And, it's helped me immensely from an organization and sales standpoint to be able to talk. So, and then for me, like integrating your CRM into these AI tools and pulling messages and emails and stuff like that. I mean, Claude just came out, integrates into Gmail. Gemini already had that. So, it's going that way. There's obviously like a risk and uncertainty of that all of these companies, I mean, they already had access to your data, but like feeding that all to the AI, it's scary. It's scary stuff. We're in uncharted territory here, but you got to kind of use what you got here and or else it's going so quick, you're just going to get left behind.
And absolutely. And you know what? The privacy concerns that I think a lot of people have are obviously valid. And there are certain steps you can put in place with using AI tools to keep it private. One of them is to install a local LMM. So you can, DeepSeek is one of those that you can install locally, or Llama, if you want to keep your information just totally private from any of those language models. But you're right. I mean, I think we're living in an age now where if anyone wants to find out anything about you, they pretty much can. We leave trails out all over the place in emails and, browser visits to websites with little breadcrumbs everywhere about our activities and what we like, what we don't like. And, these giant retail chains out there have been using that information to send you targeted ads for many years, right? And it works, They know you looked at a new watch or a new phone last week, and all of a sudden you start seeing all those popping up in your web pages that you visit. They've got ads showing. And so AI has been used for many, many years, and it's just been a little bit under the radar. Now it's surfaced to the top. It's similar to previous revolutions we've had. I'm old, so I've lived through a few of them, but one of the first digital revolutions we had was cell phones. And in fact, they weren't even digital back then, they were analog. But cell phones, when they first came out, there was a resistance to using them. I don't want a phone with me, I want that privacy. Now everyone that I see can't really live without a phone, a personal cell phone.
Yeah.
There's still people hanging on to their landlines, right? But, usually they're older generation. My mother-in-law hasn't got a cell phone. She's got a landline, and she lives by that landline. If she's not at home, she doesn't get a phone call. She can't talk to anybody, She can't email anyone. She asks us to email her friends in the UK. And it's, so if you're not adopting AI right now, there's a perfect example. You're like my mother-in-law, who is totally technology irrelevant and cannot be contacted in any way, and has no idea even probably if I talked to her about what AI exists right now. If I said, hey, have you heard about what's going on with ChatGPT? She would look at me like with this look on her face going, what's he talking about?
Yeah.
Right? So it is, if you don't jump on it now, you'll get left behind. And just like computers, just like the internet, two other revolutions that have happened in the last 30 years, 40 years, it's happening fast. And this one is faster than all of them put together.
Yeah.
It's so hard to keep up with AI technology, the new releases, the new features, How do you keep up with it? Because I struggle to keep up with it. Have you got any tips?
Well, I consider this part of my job now to be as up to date. So I'm in a few groups actually where we talk about this stuff. I'm following, some leaders on this thing, and I research it a lot and I play with it a lot as well,
Yeah.
right? So it's hard, especially if you want to settle into one of them and use that as sort of the main one. It kind of hard because then the other ones come out with a feature that's like, oh, well, now I want that, right? So I think we're maybe seeing a bit of a plateau of like features. The strength of the models are obviously just getting better and better, but I think the features are starting to come to parity between all of them,
Yeah.
the big ones anyways. So that's how it's like I said, it's my job to sort of stay on top of this stuff so I can help my clients and myself with it.
Yeah, the same way. I've got probably about 5 emails that come in every day that are AI aggregators and giving you the latest news. I don't even get through all five, to be honest, because those five have got 15 or 20 new things that happened since yesterday. So you're looking at 100 new things pretty much every single day. And then on top of that, AI apps. Wow, there's thousands of those being released every single day.
Hmm.
And there's apps for nearly everything now. It's hard to define, but for anyone listening out there, if you are just starting to get into AI, as Stephen mentioned, choose one. Maybe choose ChatGPT to get going with the free version, and stay with that. Don't go looking at all the other ones out there. Being curious, going, what can I do with that one? Get used to one first, and then start branching out into more advanced uses using other language models. And the two that I recommend, if you were going to choose one right now, would be ChatGPT or Claude. Claude Sonnet 3.7 right now is really good. Even
Hmm.
3.5 is still really good, especially from a
Hmm.
writing and a humanization point of view. I think Claude is the
Yeah.
head of ChatGPT there. That's by Anthropic. There you go. So, and the other one's OpenAI with ChatGPT, obviously. So we'll put some links to those in the show notes. That's okay. Let's move on to a bit more about how you help solve your customers' problems. So, give me kind
Hmm.
of two or three examples of what your customers typically struggle with.
Yeah. So the biggest thing I see is just these manual processes where they'll just be creating transaction documents in two different places and having to copy and paste or email something and then take that email and create a quote from it. So there's just a huge disconnect when you have these manual processes, right? So I help obviously like integrating those tools, integrate your finance. And it doesn't have to be Zoho, but we can integrate many different cloud-based finance applications. Zoho,
QuickBooks, for
right?
example.
Yeah,
Yeah, big one.
QuickBooks.
Right.
So we take that sort of from a finance operation standpoint, and then also like into project management tools. How do we take that data, that tribal knowledge that you've had all these conversations with this client about a project, an RFQ you've got in, and translate that to the project team, right? So typically what that looks like now is an RFQ comes in, the sales team's working on it. Maybe they bring some leads from the business in. Obviously, applications will come in and generate concepts and quotes and figure out what they're going to do. And then that might be months before anyone else sees that again, right? So they probably long forgot about that stuff. So meanwhile, the sales guys and maybe application guys have been talking to this customer weekly or monthly or whatever, right? And have more requirements, and maybe the requirements have changed. So being able to capture all that data and having it in one place, or being able to have it transferred into the project management tools automatically, and ideally using AI to condense and structure that information. I mean, it doesn't need to be AI. We can structure that information from CRM data to project management data,
Right.
right? Like having that connection and giving that to your project manager to now distribute to the project team. Here's all the information. Here's the requirements. Here's the specs. This is what you need to use. Here's the exceptions to the specs that we got because we use this, platform instead of that. or these sensors because instead of that. So that's huge, being able to do that. But even further upstream from like application standpoint, right? Like being able to, I'm building one out now for a pretty large builder where we're building an applications dashboard in the CRM so that they can do their thing and the concepting and all that. And then it comes back with their data into the CRM. They can see in a dashboard what project or what deals they need to work on right now in order to like, and when they're due, so they know what to prioritize. And we help with that integration, right? Otherwise it's just OneNotes and Windows Explorer folders. And, a former boss of mine called it a dog's breakfast, right? So it's just a dog's breakfast, right? It's all over, right? So being able to organize that is one. And then even further upstream, if you're doing any sort of marketing, if you're running ads at all, or you're doing social and you have links to things, tracking that information into the CRM is super crucial, right? If you're spending money on, AdWords, PPC, whatever, or you're actually running content ads or social ads and you're paying people to do that, and you're not tracking which one of those ads is actually converting into conversations and ultimately into a customer, right? Like you could be throwing money at a wall. So most marketing agencies will basically give you, we just got you a bunch of leads, so a bunch of form submits, right? Half of them could be junk, half of them could be not even qualified. So being able to connect that into sales and have sales use that data to track all the way through to a closed won deal, and then feeding that back to marketing saying, hey, this ad actually converted 3 people into customers, right? So we need to double down on that one. This one maybe got us a ton of clicks and a ton of impressions on the site. And maybe we got a few web forms, but none of them were qualified and none of them converted to sales. But if you didn't know that, your marketing agency's like, this one, we all day long, it's more impression, it's more clicks, it's more lead forms, but it's not the stuff that's actually converting. So that's what we do. We take from the front end of the business in marketing, your content, we connect all that data all the way through to the final invoice, right? Call it, RFP to SAT, right? That's what we cover, right? And even before that, marketing really all the way to SAT, right? Is what we're helping companies with.
Right. And a lot of that prior sales process before you land the sale is money and time that you never get back. Right. So even just going through an RFP process or RFQ, whichever one you want to call it, simplifying, modularizing that, creating a process for you to turn around a decent RFQ in the shortest amount of time that enables you to do more of those, obviously, because typical RFQ can take a day, can take 2 days. And by the time you look at the specifications list, now just take that specifications list and feed it into AI and get it to summarize everything. Just give me the main points there for the PLC, for the pneumatics type of valve banks they want, the motors or drives that they want to use. Take the key components that are the cost items and break those out from 30, 40 pages worth of specs.
Man, I used to, we'd get an RFQ and then we get a spec, especially in the automotive industry. Like they're obviously super strict about what you need. Yeah. And I would spend hours and days combing through this like 150-page document, figuring out like, well, we don't use those sensors, but we use this ones. And they use this filter in the panel, or, they use these IO blocks and connectors and all that, and we don't. So being able to take your internal design standard, right? These are all the valve banks. These are the, the distributed IO that we use. These are the sensors we use. These are the optos we use. And then feeding that with their spec and say, look through this and give me what the differences are.
Exactly.
And then you just have that list and it's done in 15 minutes when it took you hours before, right?
Yeah, do it.
And again, like you said, all that time previously and still is not paid for. It's not billable time. It's not time that you're going to be able to get paid for. And that's really one of the big reasons why I started Ember Ops is like, I know the pain of working on a proposal and a project for months and concepting, and then you just lose it. And it just comes down to price, or it came down to whatever. you don't get any of that back. And being able to now at least streamline that so that we can reduce that time, but also then take the learnings from that, being able to input something once and reuse it, and having systems to reuse and using AI to basically like say, okay, we're doing this type of project. Where do we pull the data from? Automatically pull that, create a cost book based on all these other cost books. We've done this before, based on our design spec or based on this client's design spec and based on our last purchase price of that component, right? And being able to tie all this together, that's what I'm aiming to do in this industry. It's just like, we need manufacturing back in North America, obviously, and automation is the only way for us to really do that. But in order for automation companies to help drive that growth, they need better margins, they need better systems, they need to be more efficient, they need better customer service and being able to respond quicker because they're not bogged down in all these details and stuff like that. So that's what I'm fixing, right? That's what I'm helping to fix in this industry.
Wow. So anyone out there listening is doing all those things manually right now, reading through a 100-page spec list, comparing to what you use against what the customer's specing, and then, breaking that down into a RFQ and taking days or even weeks to put an RFQ together. You got to get in touch with Stephen. Okay. So we'll share his details later. That will just save you a whole bunch of time and hassle, because no one actually likes doing that. I don't know anyone that really likes going through and doing that kind of task. So that's another thing AI does. It takes away those mundane, tasks that everyone hates doing and simplifies them, speeds them up. But yeah, there's a lot to that time savings that you're not getting paid for up front for projects. Now, getting on that note, we started off with the CRM. So tell us why, you put so much emphasis on the CRM as being like the key fundamental building block for everything else.
Yeah, I mean, the CRM really is the starting point for your customer data. That's where it all starts and where it should start. It's a way for you to, track customer habits and characteristics, but then it's sort of like that centralized place where we can then feed the other ones, right? So the sales people and the project teams really need to know very intimate details about your customer and who they are and what their traits are and how they operate, or who do we need to convince, because this is a CapEx project. How do we convince these accountants and these people to accept our quote, right, at this price? Or can we try to put some of that into OpEx, or how do we structure this? So having that all in one place and then feeding all the other tools and giving the contextual data to finance, to project teams, to even your engineers and design teams, right? And being able to give that in a way that serves it up well for them. That's where you have to use a CRM to do that, right? You can't really you don't want to get everyone into your finance tools. A lot of people then just end up creating custom applications or spreadsheets, and I call them nuclear powered spreadsheets, right? And those spreadsheets, my dad used to say this, he's like, those spreadsheets, when you open them, they go flick, 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 they flash, right? He's like, I hate those things, right?
Yeah.
They take half an hour to load and they break. And, Fred from 5 years ago is actually the one who wrote all the VBA script. I used to be that guy. I used to be Fred, right?
All those macros in there,
Yeah. Yeah. But using like a platform that's supported by a company, that there's a good partner network that can help, and having a partner that knows your business or can learn your business very quickly. It just, I know this is sort of a roundabout way of saying having it in a CRM just makes the most sense.
Okay. I'm going to bring this one up because this is a personal whim of mine. I hate CRMs. Okay. And I'll tell you why I hate CRMs. I understand the benefits and the value of them, but most of them have got so large and convoluted that adding something very simple like a quick contact or a note to a contact takes you longer than it actually takes to type the note, just to get to that point where you can enter the note. Tell me what's different about Zoho CRM for starters, and what your ideal CRM looks like. So salespeople and other people involved in the process are not going through the pain of just navigating a CRM system to get to the place where they need to enter data.
Yeah. So I like Zoho because of the flexibility and the customizability. But with that, there's a ton of out of the box complexity. And Zoho is no different than Salesforce or HubSpot, right? You can have tools that are oversimplified that don't really work, or you can have tools, like Salesforce, where there's just someone recently said it's like the octopus of software, right? You just got so many like tentacles and things, right?
I think I
And
said
Zoho
that.
can be the same way.
Yeah, I think I was
Yeah,
the one that said that. It's got like 100 arms,
yeah,
and you don't know
exactly.
which arm to pull to get
Yeah,
something
yeah,
done. So,
yeah. So for me, what I do immediately in Zoho CRM is we just strip out everything you don't need and we pull that out. And then my focus, and to maybe some owners' chagrin, or my focus is how do we make it as easy as possible for the sales people? Because if we can make it easy for them, then everything else works, right? We can collect the data at the right time. So what a lot of people do is like, well, we need all this information up front. And it's like, we need their title and their company name and their phone number and their fax number and all this. And we make all these required fields. And then your sales guys get fatigued and they're just like, I'm not even going to put it in there. I'll just call them. But if we can do it where they can easily enter stuff, they can easily schedule out what they need to do. We automate like making the records of what you've done. We integrate tools and have mobile apps so that we can make it super easy to record that information. Or we automate things like your Zoom meeting notes into a deal or into the meeting record and create that automatically and have all that context so that you want to actually go into the CRM, and because it's going to give you the context and what you need to do next. But yeah, that's what we do. We just focus on making it as easy as possible for the salespeople, because then it all just takes care of itself.
yeah, I think you said it right there with stripping back all the stuff that you don't use, because something like Salesforce comes as a package with all that functionality that you don't need necessarily, and creates barriers for salespeople. And being in sales my whole life, one of the biggest barriers was if it would take me longer to actually enter the details into a CRM than it would to me to actually put it into an Excel document, okay, by a row for a contact with their name, phone number, email address. Then it's always, you know what, I'll just do that later. It's always a do later thing that you run out of time. But, I don't think we're very far away from, a salesperson or any other member of the team being able to transcribe those details and say, you know what, their name is, right? And put that in, the company name, the phone number. And if they do still have a fax, right, the fax number is, the email address, and even the postal address. They could be reading that from an address sheet from the website or contact information, just say it, and then AI can basically strip that out and put it straight into the CRM system. Now, that leads me to a question about Zoho CRM. Are they starting to integrate some of the AI functionality into the CRM to kind of automate some of the tasks and make life easier for you?
Yeah, so Zoho is coming out with their version of their AI agents. They've had what's called Zia for a long time, which it can give you, it's their version of an AI that actually can integrate into OpenAI to sort of turbocharge it. But they've had something for a while now where you can do exactly what you're saying. You open the Zia agent and say, I want to make a lead. Here's their name, here's their number, and it automatically creates that lead for you, right? Just by dictating it.
Perfect.
So
Yeah.
you can create those structured things. And yeah, they're all in on AI. They're actually, their CEO just stepped down recently so that he could focus on building their AI infrastructure and making it work. So, because we know that's important, especially in the CRM space, like AI agents are what is going to be how things work. The other thing that, like, from a ease standpoint is like, I use lots of different tools to like pull that information in automatically so that I don't
Right.
need to like have that, right? So like I use tools like Link Match to pull data from LinkedIn, and I integrate that with my clients all the time because it's so easy. you're on LinkedIn and you're like, hey, that's an interesting person. I should talk to them. Click a few buttons, it pulls all their information in, puts them into the CRM. And then you can say, okay, tomorrow I'm going to do outreach to them and try to message them on LinkedIn, or I'll make a connection request, or I'll send them an email if they have their email there, or using tools to actually find emails for them.
Yeah.
So it's all about where are your sources, automating the capture of your leads as best as possible. And when you need to do it manually, making it as easy as possible for the salespeople to get it in there. Then managing those throughout the pipeline, and how, when you're reaching out to them, having a dashboard to say, who am I reaching out to today? What am I doing today? Making it super easy to say, okay, I got to do that. And I'm going to schedule out a follow-up in a week from now, or 3 days from now, or 6 months from now, right?
Right. Yeah.
We help people with account management. So this happens a lot. You might get 3 projects over a span of 2 or 3 years, big projects from XYZ automotive company, and then they just don't have projects, or they're working on different projects, and you just don't, have that interaction. But then 3 years from now, they could have that again. So making sure you're staying in touch with those customers and prioritizing the customers based on maybe lifetime value, right? So having all that contextual information in the CRM and automating that, integrating it into your book so that your sales team can see all of that, makes the salespeople want to go into the CRM and not hate their lives, right?
And if you're the owner of a small machine builder, and you might be the salesperson as well. And so if you've got operations to run, and sales is that thing that you have to do, but you don't really have time to do because you love building machines and you love solving customers' problems, making this sales part of it as easy and quick as possible is key to that. So get some good notes there, especially combining the AI and CRM for doing some of those tasks. So really, really good conversation. We could talk about all day about this. And so, but I think we've shared a whole bunch of really good points there, especially for AI integrating into operations. Now, we're kind of running out of time, but I wanted to just touch on succession. Okay, just a little bit, because I know that you're actually working with some customers on creating succession plans so that the business can still operate once they've decided to retire. And it's very valid right now with the amount of baby boomers that are retiring over the next few years. There's a lot of business owners that want to take a break from running the business, but don't necessarily want to sell the business, right? So what are a couple of tips that you can give quickly for anyone that's thinking about retiring and maybe handing off the business to their children or to a trusted partner that's worked with them for many years? What can you tell them right now?
Yeah, or even selling it, right?
Or selling it. Yeah, that's the other option, of course, right?
I've talked to companies that have been sold, and I know the process there, and I've looked into this a lot, and it's rough, right? They rake you through the coals when they're coming into your business if you're going to sell. Or if you want to transition to someone else, you're still selling it, right? Like you're still, and everyone who's buying your business, whether they're a close friend or they're, a private equity fund or there's something along those lines, they're going to want to see the data, and you need to be able to prove that. And if your process is all in Jim's head and, no one else really knows, and he's taught people, and that's great, and you need that for sure. But if you don't have that documented, if you don't have your pipeline showing, or, what the lifetime value of all these customers and this book of business that you're giving to someone else, right? If you don't have the numbers on what are the industries and how much money do we make in each industry, and where are all our leads coming from?
Yeah.
Where do we get this, right? Is it all this person, or are we doing good marketing? Do we have good assets there? But operationalizing all of that tribal knowledge as best as you can. AI makes that so much easier to do nowadays, but putting it into systems, having them accurate, having them connected, and doing that now, because I talk to people and I have clients, right? They're like, I'm retiring in 5-10 years, and I kind of want this business to be worth something and sell it. And if you don't do that, if you don't have all that data, if you don't have accurate financials and pipeline and processes, then you're just selling a book of business and maybe some assets and maybe there's some brand power, which helps, which is good.
Yeah.
And it's not maybe that simple, but you got to be prepared. That's all I would say.
Well, I think now, especially with AI, I think it's an easier task than ever to start creating those procedures, those SOPs, the structure to keep all that data in the applicable place, the book of business and the concepts that you've developed over the years that make your business unique, right? So that, I mean, every business does something different from another to be unique and provide a different level of service or a different quality of product. Everyone does something quite unique, and finding that uniqueness is one of the keys for that succession, because that's what people are going to be looking for, evidence that you actually have done something like that, right?
I would also just say like SOPs and documents like is good, but like having that actually in a system, in an actual application or something like that that goes through the process and teaches people as they're using it and it's very intuitive is sort of the next step. And that's more provable than just say, yeah, we have these documents and everyone follows them. It's like, well, people could write documents all day long, but that doesn't mean people are following them, right?
No, or you can go to our wall of Post-it notes over there.
Yeah.
They follow the steps.
Yeah. I mean, ISO helps with that for sure, but having the systems is better.
All right, so I'm just going to start wrapping up here, Stephen. A few minutes left. There's a few questions I always ask every guest, and one of them would be, and I have to phrase this slightly different to you because you are not in the, well, you are in the industrial automation industry from a different point of view. But let's just say you never went into industrial automation, okay? What do you think you would have ended up doing as a career?
That's it'd probably be something to do with either music, either a music producer or engineer. I love doing that stuff on my spare time, although, doing it for a job probably would ruin it. So either that or maybe something in real estate, something along those lines.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's funny. We all end up in the automation industry somewhat. Some people deliberately, and if you go to school to be a controls engineer, then you might have some idea of what that looks like in the future. But I think a lot of people just fall into it completely by accident and end up in the industry. I think your plan was a little bit more laid out with your father obviously being a key player in the ATS foundations there. And certainly the experiences you had as a kid and some of the things you saw as a kid, you had a lot more insight into automation than most of us did, for sure. All right, so I'm going to ask you the next question now, and you're not allowed to say AI, okay? So on a day-by-day basis, and you're going about every single day, and it can either be work or home, what is one device, one app, one thing that you couldn't live without?
I mean, I'm a task guy. I like to do brain dumps and having an organized way to sort of manage tasks. So I use Zoho projects, but like having good project management tools, I could not live without that for sure.
Okay, there you go, Zoho projects. And just to simplify that a little bit, what do you use as general task manager?
Yeah, it is Zoho projects, right? So it manages all my projects and tasks within that, all my client projects, all my internal projects, all my, late night brain dumps when I maybe had a couple and just have all these ideas for the business. I can get on my phone and dictate like, let's put this task in this one and then I can review it and, use it later, right? So just having a place to dump ideas, but then having a way to sort of schedule things out and manage the projects and tasks is huge.
Yeah, I have a couple of those lists actually. I have a scratch pad, which I can use on any device. So if I've got a quick note to take down, it's just a note app called Simple Note, but it works on any device and it's free. So quick note in there, that will go to my PC or my iPad or my phone. The other one that I do because of my ADHD is my parked list. So, when you're working away and something comes to my mind, and I used to get distracted and just go and do that right away. So what I do is actually now write it down, or I don't write it down anymore. I type it into an app and just basically put it on my park list, and then it's there. And then later on, when I've I've got a bit more time, I can go back and, let's not forget about that. So that works really well for me for the part list. I only just started doing that about 6 months ago, and it's really effective.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So another question we ask everybody is a recommendation for a guest to come on the show. Who would you like to come on to Machine Builder Talk?
Well, he's got his own podcast, but he's a really wealth of knowledge. I would say, Jim Beretta is a great guy. A lot of people know him in the industry. He's helped me a lot. So I would call him out if I have to pick someone off the top of my head. That's who I'd pick.
Perfect. And Jim's actually someone I've reached out to on your recommendation. I haven't totally connected with him yet, but now I've got a really good, solid reason that Stephen suggested you as the guest for Machine Builder Talk. So I will do that. Stephen, this has been a really refreshing conversation, a little bit different from all our other episodes. I think it's really important to look at, all aspects of machine building. And we talk to controls people that, talk about controls related topics. And we've kind of strayed off of those normal machine building topics to talk about something that's been, that's really important in the business of machine building. So it's really good to get a fresh perspective from someone that's been in the industry, that's now helping other machine builders optimize their operations and streamline their sales. And I'm going to use that catchphrase. So automating the automators. I love it. Right. I mean, you've definitely got to do something with that. So I really want to thank you for your time today, Stephen. I look forward to this episode being aired. But before we go, how can anyone listening to this episode find you, your business on LinkedIn, whatever you want to tell them right now, and tell them where to find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is typically the best way to find me. Just Stephen Slothouber, Stephen with a PH. I'm sure they'll be in the show notes. But yeah, find me on LinkedIn or my company, Ember Ops, no space. I also have ember-ops.com, and that's being reworked currently, but LinkedIn is typically the best way.
All right, perfect. So thank you for coming on the show. I look forward to seeing you soon, and have a great rest of the week.
Yeah, take care. This was fun. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Goodbye. And that's a wrap for today's show. So thanks for tuning in to Machine Builder Talk. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to click subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you really like listening, a quick review goes a long way to help more machine builders and automation pros like you find the show. Until next time, stay curious, stay connected, and keep building.